Well, thank you very much. First of all, to begin with, I think you've been very kind with the grade. But also I'm always happy to join you here whenever there is this invitation that has come my way. So I just want to say how happy I am to be with you today. So thank you very much. Of course, looking at the case study we have here for us, which we have had opportunity to talk about a couple of times earlier on over a couple of years. It's a journey that my country has been on for the last 22, 23 years. It's been a very challenging one, absolutely. Nonetheless, what is going to be the alternative other than just having to confront the situation as it is? And we have tried to do that. And as well explained by, or I see in the case study itself, or by individual students who made informed comments about it. There have been these challenges, there have been opportunities as well. Well, but in between, there are these possibilities we can build on. And innovation. We have had innovative ways of dealing with our challenges at times. Other things have been very straightforward. We deal with them as we see. But we have also been looking at long term. There are immediate issues to deal with, medium term things to deal with. There have also been issues to look at long term. Where are we going and how do we get there? And that's how some of these things you see in our strategy have been created. When we had a 2020 vision that was going for 20 years from 2000, and now we are starting to look beyond 2020, already thinking of how to put together a vision when we arrive at 2020, how we get to 2050, that would be 30 years, maybe break that into two and have 15, and we see how we do that. But the starting point, as seems to be well understood, has been to bring the people of Rwanda together, and also all of us to understand that it's we in the forefront of this business to get our country going. Help has been coming, continues to come, different levels. But at the end of the day, if we are not united in our purpose to say, this is where I want to be, it's us to do it, the kind of ownership that was mentioned is very key. So I agree with the one who talked about ownership really as something very important. You don't want anybody to come and deal with your problems. First of all, you won't get anybody to deal with your problems. Secondly, even if you were to get them, it won't be for a long term. It will be for a short term. Thirdly, it is not sustainable over time. What has been built, if it was built by somebody else for you, it will collapse on you in a short time. So we had to begin with this full understanding that we had to do the job ourselves and keep finding ways to we can partner with the people, we can have people supporting what we are doing, and in many ways that has happened, but we have remained in control of our business of development, our country. That is very key. Now, of course, many challenges again were put. If you look at, to begin with, how the country is landlocked. When you think of how do I deal with this, then at the same time, we had this tragedy of 1994. So it is landlockedness, then the tragedy of 94, then many people killed, or others anyway, who even before that happened, the level of education, skills, and many things, very low. So we had these immense challenges to deal with. But if we are talking about the tragedy itself, then it is to mobilize people around reconstruction. First of all, starting with their own lives, then the nation itself. Then landlockedness. What is it that can help us overcome this? Or what is it that we can create in terms of value that actually isn't going to be so sensitive to being landlocked? So how can, or something that, and in fact, that's how it comes to the idea, and I think again it was probably explained very well, of creating a knowledge-based economy. It is difficult. It's going to be difficult to have knowledge being blocked by boundaries. So landlocked, being landlocked wasn't really going to be the thing. But again, I think somebody put it very well. It's a sort of rallying point, really. But to that point, even if it is a long-term goal, there are many things one is able to do towards that objective that makes sense even at that moment you are doing it, going forward and even looking at that long term. And therefore, for us, and I think maybe in many similar situations, it is not going to be that you either do this or this. So it's not an either-or situation for us. You find you've got to try what you can and move as far as you can with it. And then I'm sure as you go forward, you keep being educated about what will work and how does it work and what are the benefits involved and so on and so forth. So does developing, for example, tea, coffee, or other things in our country conflict in any way with the ambition to build a knowledge-based economy? I don't think so. You keep doing what is possible for you. You begin actually with what you have. First of all, we have tea, we have coffee. This is what we also found. And then we find how best can we develop this, add value, how much of that can we, and then connect with the value chains across the world. So this has nothing to do with our other ambitions, or it won't conflict. Investing in our people for education, as I said, it was talked about. We invest heavily in education. In fact, health, education, infrastructure, and agriculture. These are four things that come at the top. And not only in primary. Primary, we have invested in primary education. We want to make sure that every child has access to education. We have gone so far with how many children we educate, almost 100% in primary school, but this is not enough. Then we have covered the secondary, 6 years of secondary education. Now we are investing in higher education. And it's not just access. It's not just making sure that everybody can attend school. We are also making sure that we think about this quality of education that must be provided, working with other institutions, whether neighboring countries or abroad. In fact, in the recent times, we have been able, for example, now we have Kagame University having set up shop in Rwanda. They train our people they started with master's degree level and almost at par with what they are providing people here in the United States. We have something that was created many years ago, which is now based in Rwanda from South Africa, called African Institute of Mathematical Sciences. It has established itself in Rwanda. We have African Leadership University established in Rwanda. All these and a couple of others. And all these are higher education institutions that have accepted and have seen actually possibilities based on what is happening in the country, and not only for the country, but also for the region of East Africa, which has over 150 million people. So this is then we have created financial possibilities based on venture capital that will actually help people who are developing different ideas from these higher education institutions that we have created, and to make all that work. We are seeing good progress in that area as well. We are seeing a more private sector come in, get involved to actually be part of that, and so connecting higher institutions of learning with the private sector and government doing its part to make sure that whatever is required to build a very strong foundation and move forward, all this is happening. And this is happening at a time when, as probably you would have read directly or indirectly from the case study, that from the beginning, with all the problems across the country, there were more capacities in the government than in the private sector. So what we are trying to do also now is to make sure that we transition from this situation where the government is doing a lot of more heavy lifting and pushing it to the private sector to play a more central role in our economy, as it has also been developing, and that development has been very fast. So really what has made, one can say, well, but what is it really that is driving these things? So people will jump to conclusion and talk about leadership and leaders and so on. They have their place, that's true. We all play our part in making sure that these things happen. But many times people will not remember that even you have the best leadership, whatever that definition you give it in the world, the people involved, actually being led, if they are not responsive or responsive enough, maybe the leadership will remain frustrated. So what I'm saying here is, while you may credit leadership as we understand it for doing this, I think something is happening in Rwanda and has happened also that it's almost everybody in the country. Not only are they participating on the basis that they understand that it is their responsibility. And they are the winners if they succeed, and in the end they are losers if we don't do or challenge ourselves enough to make good progress in the interface. And these are lessons learned from our past, from our history. Even before the genocide, the situation has been terrible and challenging. The levels of poverty, illiteracy, and all kinds of things. So after the genocide, it's like, those who survived and those who were involved in the liberation process have developed a new sense of mission. And there is a sense of urgency to say, no, this should not have happened to us to this extent. This is not what we deserve. And it's people really capable of doing the very things that we should be doing to take the country out of that ugly past and move it into the future that we see across the world. Some people enjoying certain things that they more or less have taken for granted, and why not Rwandans or generally Africans that we should be able to be in this place ourselves. And if we don't do it, nobody is going to do it for us. So there are many things I would say, but I think I'd also allow you to be asking some questions, and maybe we will also cover the ground that I haven't covered in this brief presentation I have talked about. But for sure today, if looking back just maybe 10, 15 years alone, what has happened gives confidence that maybe what we are doing is right. We need to do more of it. We need to keep adapting ourselves to new situations as they are developed, both internally and globally, because the global trends also affect us. There's no place they don't reach, including Rwanda. It doesn't matter that on some scale, if you will, Rwanda is a very small country, but something happens here and just comes and hits us directly. It doesn't ignore us that we are a small country somewhere and having to deal with our many challenges. So we have to make sure that we create resilience in our own economy and keep making progress and survive these externalities that also affect us like they do with others. But if you look at whether it is doing business, reports by the World Bank or World Economic Forum, Rwanda has come always at the top as the fastest reformer, and on the whole continent, actually having it's always among the top three for building a competitive economy. We have benefited evidently from regional integration. Makes a lot of sense. We are key players in the regional integration process that happens. Even now at a continental level, we find ourselves. So, and if you look at the Human Development Report by UNDP, in the last 20 years, we've made progress that comes number one in the whole world. Where we have been and where we are now, the pace at which we have moved hasn't been matched anywhere. So I imagine something right is being done, even on that basis. And the feelings of the various citizens themselves who are involved in this, they tell you their lives are getting better. It's not urban areas are on, it's rural areas, it's have access to water, they have access to healthcare, they have access to education, they have busy small businesses in rural areas. The initial challenge we had, and which we have also addressed to some extent, which we have seen has actually accelerated a lot of things, is provision of electricity. We had the problem of energy, electricity from the beginning, and now we have made good investments, and electricity is reaching many parts of the country. And we are seeing, booming activity, small businesses, people doing different things in rural areas, and the city growing, obviously. And other cities growing very fast, because people are no longer flowing just from rural areas to the capital. Because of this and other factors, they are beginning to create, secondary cities. And you can, there are more things you see with your own eyes than even the numbers suggest, which means there are more things that we actually are behind these numbers. So far, it's a good story, very challenging story. It will always be. And I don't think we can never feel satisfied that we are doing enough or that we are doing so well. It's always dictated by, even where we are coming from, that we want to so fast leave behind us and keep moving to a better future that we deserve. So we are happy to invite you to, in some way, anybody with your possibilities to be part of our journey. We would be happy to be with you and be your partners in whatever ways. And so thank you very much for this opportunity.
Do you want me to choose? Or?
I think somebody should pick it.
President, thank you very much for coming. I'm from South Africa, and just with your hat as an African leader, you spoke about cities. So 15 of the 20 fastest growing cities in the world the next 50 years will be African. And 70% of Africans by 2050, you spoke about your next plan, will be living in cities. But the people are building them themselves. 60% of Africans live in slums. So this level of strategy and thinking that's required at the city level in Africa, I'm just curious about how this can be grown and scaled up. And if you think of cities rather than countries, perhaps there's a way to think about taking this kind of success across the continent fast.
Right.
You're going to need it.
Yeah. Yeah, other than learning from our own experience, we learn from other people's experience as well. I think we are already seeing that happen. So we immediately think that it better happens when we are ahead of that by planning, so that things go according to plan. And I think we have also been doing that. In fact, we have, for example, a partnership with Singapore on this. There are teams that work, our own and Singaporean teams. They've been helping. They first planned our city. The city of Kigali is expanding, is growing very fast. In fact, in 1995, slightly before that, the city was about 280,000 people. Now it is 1.5 million people, so it has grown very fast. But what has helped, because if those who have been to our capital, it's because we were able to plan very fast so that this growth, is taken care of by the planning and the kind of infrastructure we have been able to put in place. And you want to find the kinds of slums that you may find in other places just because of that planning. I mean, maybe we had, in a sense, we had disadvantage of not, of really more or less starting from scratch. We were able to immediately plan and go ahead of the expansion of the city. And we have gone ahead and started planning and already planned for these other secondary cities. In fact, there are studies and activities going on with the assistance of the World Bank. And the idea is to, when we saw that this is happening, was happening, then we made sure that let it happen according to plan, and we avoid. I think urbanization is a very good thing. So we are now ready for us in the process of thinking more in terms of urbanization, and as you said, instead of countries, looking at cities. In fact, our country being small now with 12 million people, we are looking at our country as a city. So that's how we are doing it. Yeah.
Yes?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Toyosi. I come from Nigeria. As you know, Africa, a lot of countries in Africa depend immensely on importation. I wanted to ask you, we produce many things we don't consume, and we consume a lot of things we don't produce.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you the role that you think that's, I wanted you to speak to the role of science and technology, and predominantly vocational education in Africa.
Yeah. Yes.
Just so we don't build so many intelligent, smart people with formal education.
Yes.
And without skill, we have a knowledge economy, but it's
Right.
not supported with skill. I'd like for you to speak to that.
Oh yeah, I think, thank you for bringing that up. Maybe I should have actually mentioned it. In fact, we have, alongside primary, secondary, higher education, we have established strong institutions of technical and vocational training institutions. That has happened in the last, actually, 15 years. And in fact, it provides for possibilities to keep switching from one to another as you even go ahead. So people, after their secondary education, they have access to technical and vocational training institutions, and they can spend there many years, and if they choose, they can continue with the higher education at the university level. And we are seeing good results from that. But it comes to the point you are making of we have another program alongside that, which I have seen other countries on our continent are also doing. We have made in Rwanda policy because we want to start doing things in our country, making things, not always importing things, but actually we have an aim to export things we can produce. And that is already, again, happening. And it's running in the cycle of Rwandans. We are saying, no, we must do things. We must make things. We must sell our products to our neighbors and beyond. So education, one type, then technical and vocational training is key. We have made huge investments in that. We are seeing tens of thousands of students benefiting and actually fitting into the industries, not only in our country, but also in the region.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering, so as we were talking about traditional industries and the new industries that have emerged, how are you thinking about continuing to drive the tremendous growth that the country has experienced with those traditional industries, and what role are they going to play? What role are the new industries going to play? And do you see a role for industries that don't exist yet in Rwanda that maybe entrepreneurs will discover in the process?
Right. You see, this is what I said. We started with what we have, and we wanted to develop that, and take that to the level we can, in many ways. But there are also other possibilities that are found as we keep going forward. And we are not saying we do one thing at the expense of the other. We are trying to do things that we have identified that make sense. Either, well, for example, we had agro industries, but we didn't have many of those, or if whatever was there was not of such a good quality that would actually go to the export market. So we have concentrated on saying, let's take this to the level that we can, that makes sense, that benefits those who are in it. And then we look at other industries as well. For example, recently, I'm sure you are aware of what is happening globally, like because of higher wages now in China, some of the industries are finding, other markets. And we have, for example, we are now into textile industry. We're able to, do that, and it was mainly because of some of the industries that were closing here because of that, and we connected with that, and now they have come to Rwanda and established. And the technical people actually we talked about are already working in these industries, and we are finding employment for our young people. We have a lot of young people, under 30, about 70% of the population. So we are finding employment. There are these. So there are more industries that will be coming on that basis, and we are encouraging. And as we do that, we also, in fact, the biggest contributor now to our GDP is the services sector. We're seeing a lot of activities in the service sector, whether it is finance or related to hospitality industries and so on and so forth. All of these are coming together, and the private sector, the entrepreneurs, we will find more things to do and build on that. It's an open economy, as you will, and we encourage innovations to take place, and I think we are seeing a very good trend.
Lynn?
Excellency, my name is Belinda Chan from Zambia. I just want to talk about your Vision 2020 and moving forward with Vision 2050. I noticed with great interest that 2020 was really anchored within the MDG framework, to which extent that you were able to actually achieve some of the MDGs. I'm wondering, going forward, are you also planning to integrate the SDG framework in 2050,
Yes.
given its complexity and all its indicators of measurement? Because I think that it has also helped you also achieve a lot of the global indices, like you mentioned, the Human Development Index, World Governance Index, transparency. All these have been linked and have been a measure of accountability to some extent.
Yes.
So how are you going to move forward with the SDG framework in 2020?
It's more or less as we did with MDGs. I had the pleasure of being a co-chair of the MDG process, which handed over to the SDGs process. But more or less similar, really, only that in this particular case, there is probably more involvement of the private sector and private investments emphasized and mobilized. There is more it concerns everyone. Initially, MDGs were more or less like for developing countries and Africa, and people were just trying to help. But with the climate change issues that have now come to surface, and where issues of climate are no longer aren't just going to affect developing countries, they affect the whole world. Therefore, everybody now is involved in that. So it has been broader, the SDGs are broader. And so when we have now moved to a stage where we are thinking of 2020 to 2050, inevitably we have to take into consideration this development of sustainable development goals. What is it we are doing, and how does it involve more private sector, technology, answer to the needs of the climate issues that the world is facing? So that is part of it. We are really following this trend ourselves and influenced by the key things that have been identified for sustainable development goals.
I would like to understand, how do you plan your infrastructure, and how do you see the importance for the infrastructure in the next decade or so? Because it seems to me that you spend a lot of money in a huge airport, while only 26% of the population have access to electricity. Although you do have a huge reserve of gas that could give you a very cheap electricity supply. So, do you calculate the economic rate of return of each asset? How are you planning the infrastructure for 2050?
We are planning for the infrastructure in a number of ways. First of all, we are looking at medium, long term. What are the needs of the country in terms of infrastructure, whether it is energy, or when you talk about the airport, there are many considerations. In fact, we are doing the airport with the private partners. So, and together we have found the need for an airport. Well, there are many things. We have invested in an airline. For example, somebody may even say, why do you have to invest in an airline? Airline is not... is a complicated business indeed. It's not something you would wish to immediately think about and put your money there if you want high returns. But also if you are looking long term and looking at other things that are impacted by that, then you can make the investment. So the same thing with the airport. The airport is part of Kigali being a hub, even for logistics. Because, again, if you look at our landlocked problems, and you're thinking of creating a logistics center, you are actually thinking beyond just having an airport for the sake of it. You are looking at it in terms of even dealing with other problems. Thirdly, it's not that we are developing an airport at the expense of providing electricity to our people. In fact, both are happening at the same time. The investments we have already ongoing in the area of electricity, including the utilization of the gas that we have under Lake Kivu. In fact, we are already... There was a pilot project which is now producing 26 megawatts, because it's a bit complicated. The technology used was complicated, so it was being tested. And it has now worked. So that means we can produce more electricity from it, because this one has already been tested. It's working very well. It has been under test now close to a full year. And it's without problems. Instead, we're going to have more investment. In fact, they have already been made more investments. So infrastructure is going to be key in many ways, whether it is managing these cities that we're talking about. In fact, not only there are many aspects to it. It's electricity, it's the logistics, we are now creating, in fact, smart cities. Kigali is becoming a smart city, again connected with what somebody asked, even when it relates to climate issues and other things and clean energy and so on. So this is why I said there is a lot of planning that has gone into it with partners across the world. It's not just that, it's not that anybody is doing anything blindly, but rather it's the infrastructure, how is it going to serve the economy, how, we have advanced ICT systems. For example, we now have 4G LTE, already 100% in Kigali. In fact, by 2018, next year, towards the end, the whole country will be covered in 95%. And we are doing that with Korea Telecom. So it's not just the government putting in money as such at the expense of another sector. It's partnership again with the private sector. Korea Telecom found it to be a good business, and we thought so. We worked together. We are rolling out such types of infrastructure. So we don't look at it just in one way. We look at it in an integrated way. How does it serve different sectors, and how does it make money unto itself?
So, sadly, we're just hit the mark, and I do want to allow a little bit of time to see if we can take that photo. Yes, but let me thank you in the name of our students for coming here. I promise next time we'll try to do better with the weather. But it has been an honor to learn from you and from your experience. And coming from a school that stresses leadership, we appreciate your leadership and service.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.